Imagine a world where the sky has turned to bronze. For 1,260 days, 3.5 agonizing years, not a single drop of rain has touched the soil of Israel. The land itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for a release that never comes. Rivers that once carved life into the landscape have become dusty scars. Fields that fed a nation are now barren expanses of cracked clay, and the desperate cries of starving livestock echo in the unnatural stillness. This is a world bleached of color and hope, gasping under the relentless glare of a merciless sun. But this was not merely a tragic turn of nature. It was a spiritual drought, a divine judgment made visible. The nation's leadership, King Ahab and his foreign queen, Jezebel, had orchestrated a devastating trade. Ahab, a king of Israel, had turned his back on his heritage, and Jezebel, a Phoenician princess, had imported her religion with zealous fervor, systematically replacing the worship of the one true God. They had traded the glory of the living God for the hollow promises of Baal, the Canaanite god of storms and fertility. An iron-fisted campaign swept through the kingdom. The sacred altars of Yahweh, places of covenant and communion, were torn down, their stones scattered like forgotten memories. In their place, opulent temples and high places were erected for Baal and his consort, Asherah. It was a state-sponsored apostasy. The prophets of God were hunted, silenced, and forced into hiding, while the prophets of Baal feasted at the royal table. The irony was crushing. The people prayed for rain to a storm god who remained silent, offering sacrifices to a deity of fertility while the world around them withered and died. The spiritual heart of Israel was failing. But in the wild and rugged mountains of Gilead, far from the corruption of the royal court, a man was being forged in the crucible of solitude and prayer. He was a man of the wilderness, unrefined, uncompromising, and utterly consumed by his devotion to God. His name was Elijah, which means, "My God is Yahweh." It was not just a name, but a declaration, a mission statement for his entire life. While the nation withered, his spirit was being watered by a divine source. He was being prepared in secret for a public confrontation. He was about to step out of the shadows and into the throne room, to speak truth to power and ignite a revolution of the heart that would change the course of history. Before the fire falls, there is always a season of isolation. God sent Elijah to the brook Cherith. Day after day, he sat in silence, fed by ravens. Can you imagine the thoughts? God, I spoke your truth, and now I am hiding in a canyon while my people starve. Faith isn't just the moment of the miracle. It's the endurance in the hidden places. When the brook finally dried up, God didn't send him to a palace. He sent him to a widow who was preparing her last meal. God's ways are not our ways. After 3 years, the word of the Lord came. Go, show yourself to Ahab. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut.
When the king saw the prophet, he didn't repent, he accused. Is that you, you troubler of Israel? I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have.
He issued a challenge that couldn't be ignored, a spiritual duel on the heights of Mount Carmel. The stage was set. One man on one side, 850 false prophets on the other. Elijah stood with folded arms as the prophets of Baal worked themselves into a frenzy. They cried from morning until noon. They shouted until their voices broke. They bled until the ground was stained.
Shout louder! Maybe your God is busy or traveling, or perhaps he is asleep.
It was a brutal display of the emptiness of any God that isn't the Creator. The afternoon had bled away into the golden hour. The frantic, desperate cries to Baal had faded into an exhausted, defeated silence. The air, thick with failure and dust, now held a different kind of tension, a fragile, uncertain hope. As the sun began its descent, marking the sacred time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah stepped forward. His voice, calm and steady, cut through the weariness as he called the people to draw near. This wasn't a spectacle for a distant audience. It was an intimate invitation to witness a restoration. He approached the forgotten, dilapidated altar of the Lord, a pile of stones that mirrored the broken state of the nation's heart. He wasn't there to build something new, but to repair what had been abandoned, to restore what was sacred. With deliberate purpose, his hands, weathered by the wilderness, began to work. He gathered 12 stones from the mountainside. This was not a random number. Each stone was a declaration, a living symbol for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. In that moment, Elijah was prophetically reassembling a fractured kingdom, reminding them that despite their division, their idolatry, and their wandering, they were still one people under one God. He was rebuilding not just an altar, but the very foundation of their identity. This act was a sermon in stone, a tangible prayer for unity and remembrance before he ever spoke a word to the heavens. But Elijah wasn't finished. He wanted to remove every shadow of doubt, to erase any possibility of trickery. In a land gasping from a 3-year drought, where water was more precious than gold, he commanded them to bring what little they had. 4 large jars were filled and poured over the sacrifice and the wood. Then a second time. And then a third. 12 jars in total, drenching the offering, soaking the stones, and filling the trench he had dug around the altar until it overflowed. He wasn't just seeking a miracle. He was staging an impossibility. He was creating a scene where only the undeniable power of God could prevail, making the fire's task not just difficult, but utterly inconceivable by human standards. And then, as a hush fell over the mountain, he prayed. There was no shouting, no frenzy, no self-mutilation like the prophets of Baal. It was a simple, profound conversation, a plea from a servant to his king. He asked God to show this forgetful generation that he alone was God in Israel, and that he, Elijah, was his servant. But the heart of his prayer was for the people. Turn their hearts back to you again, he pleaded. It was a prayer for revival, for a homecoming of the soul, for the drought in their spirits to finally break. Then, the fire of the Lord fell. It wasn't a spark or a flicker, it was a column of divine flame, a torrent of light and heat that descended from the heavens. It didn't just burn the offering, it consumed everything. It devoured the waterlogged wood, incinerated the 12 massive stones, and burned the very dust beneath them. And then, with a final, terrifying hiss, it licked up every last drop of water in the trench, leaving the ground scorched and dry. In that singular, breathtaking moment, the argument was over. The debate was settled. The drought of the soul had ended, and before the awesome power of Yahweh, the people of Israel fell on their faces, their voices rising as one. The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. After the fire came the rain. The sound of abundance wasn't just a whisper of hope, it was a torrent of life pouring down on a land that had forgotten what it felt like to be renewed. For 3.5 years the sky had been brass and the earth dust. But with the fire came proof, and with the rain came promise. This wasn't just weather, it was a verdict. God had spoken. The drought was over. Today, you are standing on your own Mount Carmel. It might not be a literal mountain, but it is a place of decision, a place of confrontation. Your Ahab may not be a king, but a circumstance, a relentless diagnosis, a financial crisis, a broken relationship that seems beyond repair. Your 450 voices may not be prophets of Baal, but the deafening chorus of doubt, anxiety, and cynicism that screams from every corner of our culture. They are the voices of, "What if?" The whispers of, "You can't." The shouts that your faith is a fairy tale in a world governed by cold, hard facts. They mock your hope and challenge the very existence of the God you serve. But the God of Elijah hasn't changed. He is not a relic of history, He is a living reality. He is still the God who answers by fire, who steps into our impossible situations with undeniable power. He is still the God who repairs broken altars, the broken places in our hearts, our families, and our spirits. He sees the pieces of your life that feel shattered and scattered, and He is an expert at restoration. Your personal drought, that season where you felt spiritually barren and emotionally exhausted, is ending. Your rain is coming. The clouds are gathering even if you can't see them yet. So do not waver. Do not bow to the pressure. Just stand firm. Like Elijah, you must rebuild your altar. Gather the scattered stones of your belief, your discipline, your prayer life. Make a conscious choice to consecrate your challenge to Him, to drench it in faith, even when it feels counterintuitive. Then pray. Not a performance for the crowd, but a simple, honest plea from the heart. A prayer that says, "Lord, let it be known today that you are God." And then watch for the cloud, watch for the sign, because He will answer. The fire of His presence will fall, and the rain of His blessing will follow. If this story strengthened your spirit, share it with someone who needs a miracle today. Let them know they are not alone in their stand. Subscribe to join our community of faith as we explore these timeless truths together. Until next time, remember what this story proves beyond all doubt. One man, one woman, one heart aligned with God is and always will be a majority.